G'day, I'm Steve. Hey, this is Woodworking Masterclass. Welcome to the workshop. Here's an excerpt from a recent live stream with master woodcarver Mike Davies, who also works for Record Power. And he's going to share with you one of the projects that they do using their wonderful numbered system of carving chisels.
This was a little pattern, a little design that we came up with. It only uses 2 profiles at all, but it does incorporate all of those techniques. And the great thing is, you've got to work in all different directions using both hands. The beauty of these plans, because you can print them off, you know, it's a PDF, it's on your computer, you print it off, well, you can just stick that directly onto your timber and then carve through it. So you've got a pattern right there, you know. But anyway, for the sake of this, let's trace this through. All right, we're on. The numbering system that we've used, 1 to 12, has no relation at all to the traditional numbering reference system for carving tools. It's just a simple referencing system that we're using for this education, numbers 1 to 12. And on Steve's website, you'll be able to get the exact profiles, because when you print it off, it should print to scale. And if you've got your own tools, you can measure your profiles against the profiles on the size of the sheet. I'm going to use tool reference numbers 5 and 12 of our system. And so first of all, remembering those techniques, and I'll call it out as I go. Pinch position, I'm anchoring, sliding, and so on. With the pinch position of number 12, see how that just fits nicely the profile for the inner circle of that little flower. And all I'm doing is just gentle arm weight, using the profile of the carving tool to set in that circle. And I can slide that around. I'm not going too deep. If you wanted to use a mallet, if your timber was a little harder, you certainly could. You could just give it a gentle tap. But the important thing is, I got the pinch position. The hand holding the carving tool is anchored, and there's a little tap. Now, I'm going to use the same profile number 12, to do the outside of each petal. But again, this is where it becomes a little repetitive, because what this is asking you to do is to carve in all directions around the petal. So where the petal broadens out a little bit, I'll use tool number 5, but I'm just following the profile where it fits tool number 12. I've done that one. So here we go there. Now, one of the most important things here to notice is that we're going to call this the shank. The shank of the tool is the bit of steel between the handle and the cutting edge. And so inside here, this canal, what I want to make sure is, as I'm setting that profile in, that the canal is at 90 degrees to the timber surface. And that means that the setting cut that I'm making is at 90 degrees. The important point here is that if I was to set it in at an angle, when I start cutting into the timber or lowering it, then if I'd set it in at an angle, then the profile would change. It would become smaller as I get down. So the idea here is we're going to keep it at 90 degrees and set in the cut. So I've almost done the full circle. My drawing wasn't completely accurate, as you can see, but nevertheless, the carving tools will actually help to regulate that. So now I'm going to use tool profile number 12 and finish off that circle. So all I'm doing is just making nice set-in cuts around the around the flower. Because this timber is relatively soft, I can get away with just using just gentle arm weight. I'm not having to push too hard. If I needed to push hard into the timber, then I would choose to use a mallet. Again, we don't want to end up slipping, so just gentle arm weight only. So what that's going to give me is a series of vertical cuts all the way around the profile of our design. And this, I suppose, is the beauty of having the set of tools, because at least you know that the profiles are going to fit the patterns. So we've got a series of setting cuts now. So next we're going to remove some of the timber around it and bring the design into relief. And what we could do a perfect circle around there. We could set that flower into a nice border. But because it's a beginner's project, let's not make it so uniform and so rigid. We'll just remove the background in a random way. We might even leave some tool marks in there. And the nice thing about leaving tool marks in your carving is sometimes if you add a stain across it, or when you polish it, the light catches those tool marks in different ways. And what that can do is it gives it sort of a more of a rugged or rustic look. So that's okay. I'm going to use tool number 12, this time in the fist position. I'm anchored. And I'm going to use the edge of the tool to carve down towards those setting cuts that I've just made. Now I can't slip because, see, I might need to go a little deeper there. But because this is anchored now, I can't slip. And as you go, the goal will be to clear the waste with each cut that you make. So we don't want little ragged bits hanging on where we've made those nice clean cuts. Can you see that? Fist position, and the carving tool is next to my little finger. So all we're going to do is just go around and remove that timber to bring the petal into relief. The repetitive side of this, what I'm going to do is I'll probably do half of it. Opposite hand now, see, I'm going to come back into this angle here. You know, I can use the tip of the tool to get right into those edges. And so as I move around this, watch now, I'm going to use the opposite hand. Again, setting that in. So can you see how this is just progressing? It's quite rugged, it's not fantastic in terms of it's not very precise, but in some cases leaving your tool marks in the carving isn't bad. It adds to it, particularly like I mentioned when you put a finish on it and stains, because you get this high and low in colour. I reckon that is 3 mil, 4 mil, something like that. We're just bringing it into relief. But the most important thing here, and these are the same techniques that you're going to use in every single carving project, is that it's how you hold the tool, it's the pinch position for setting in, fist position for clearing away, it might be a pinch position to clear away, I'm always anchored. It's just a combination of those 6 techniques that we originally talked about. It's also using the opposite hand If I'm carving to the right, I hold the tool in my right hand. If I'm carving to the left, I hold my tool in the left hand. And I'm able to work in all directions without moving myself or the work. And that really, it's a little bit awkward at first, but once you get the hang of it, you just won't even think about it. All right, so I think that's enough there. And what I'm going to do now is start dropping the edge of those petals down. So fist position, sharp ends next to my little finger. I'm anchored. And I'm just going to drop that down to those setting cuts that we made earlier. And I'm not going to go right the way down to the bottom, just about halfway. And again, because I've got the tips intact on the carving tool, in other words, I haven't rounded the edge of the carving tool over, it's nice and straight, I can use the tips of that to get into those edges and avoid having little ragged bits hanging on. And so we'll just work our way around, again setting in a cut, setting in a cut, and then just cutting down towards it. Now all I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of extra shape onto those petals. And again, it's crude, it's supposed to be okay. I mean, it's okay to see the tool marks. What we're doing, this is a beginner's project, don't forget. Doesn't need to be super refined. We're just practicing those techniques. All we're doing is we're practicing using both hands to carve in all directions and just taking and creating that nice shape. And the nice thing is that, you know, once you've got that overall shape roughed in, so we'd say this is roughing in, you're just getting the highs and lows in place, then depending on how much time you want to spend and how refined you want to make it look, that's where you just go over and start just carefully refining the overall look of the thing. Now, it's really unusual that I've ever done, certainly for a video, a project start to finish. Usually we'd have a number of patterns sort of in a series of stages. It might be sort of, I'd have 3 or 4 in different stages, so you don't have to go through and watch all of that repetitive stuff. But in some respects, maybe it's handy that you just watch how I'm holding the tool, how I'm holding the carving tool, and if you're not bored senseless, that's a great thing. Right, how's that looking? So you can see the general gist, and to finish that I could just add this little feature, little detail that runs down the middle of each petal. So, and that's basically it. Some questions might be, what about sanding your carving? Well, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. If you want to sand your carving, it's fine. I actually, in some cases, it's all down to the style of the work. In some cases, you might not want to see tool marks in there. In other cases, tool marks might add to it. I think it's okay to sand if you want, but be super careful that you don't round over any of the crisp lines and detail that you've put in with the carving tool, because that's the fear, that you start to muddy all of those crisp lines that you've formed with your carving tool, you know. Okay, so we're coming towards the end now. What we could do is just spend time refining it and cleaning it up a little bit. But if it depends the style again, I don't mind these tool marks around the edge. I don't mind the fact that it's not a perfect circle. But if you wanted to make it super precise and super clean, well, we would just spend a bit more time working round. What you definitely don't want, whether it's supposed to be a bit rugged or super, even if it's going to be, how would we put it? If it was going to be naive, then it's okay to see tool marks, but what you don't want is little bits of fibres of timber in the crevices. You still got to be clean, but you just see the tool mark. Well, look, I mean, I could keep going and I could keep titivating, but that's all right.